Good afternoon and happy Easter. Happy Easter to everyone. Um, I wanted to jump on and finally do a video that's not a short. 'Cause I know I've kicked out quite a few shorts for everybody. Just kind of like, letting them know who I am and what my journey looked like. And, what better day than the Resurrection Day, right? Um, which is for a little more than 4.5 months into my journey. I did do my weigh-in, and I'm happy to report that I am now 273 pounds. That's another loss of 2.2 pounds. You actually hear a little bit of noise in the video. It's my daughter up there. We're doing a Easter egg hunt for her out in the yard, and she kind of antsy and ready to roll. So that's probably her banging on the ceiling that you hear. She's 6 and she a handful. Yeah, so I am happy to report I'm down now 15. I've lost 15% of my body weight in just a little more than 4 months. And I am elated at that because some people take all journey, all 72 weeks to get to that point. So, and I've done it in 15. Well, this is the start of my week 15. So in 15 weeks, I'm down 15% of my body weight. I've started at 319.6 and I'm now 272.9. So yes, that's about 47 pounds. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. I'm happy about that. To go back to the beginning though, which I promised in the longer video, I've always been considered like one of the overweight kids. I was always one of the big guy in the class. Height, I'm 6 foot tall, so I always did have quite a bit of height. I wasn't like the tallest, but I was always near the back of the line because I was tall. So that attributes to some of your weight, but I was always on the huskier side. I was the kid that my parents had to go find husky pants, if people could remember that. Back in the day, the kids used to have to wear husky when they was a little bit on the chubby side. So I used to always have to look for husky and always just being that guy. I always had super confidence, you know what I mean? Like even now, it never left me. Always was a cool kid, never had like, no real issue, I would say, surrounding the weight. But it was just something that was always in my mind that I didn't really want to be. Never really wanted to be in that category, but that's who I was and I embraced it, But, like having the opportunity, to fast forward and get to this point, have a treatment that could actually finally help is amazing. But in those earlier years, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. I would say probably once I became a young adult, when I actually started to really look at diet, you know what I mean? Because I never really had the education around diet and exercise for my family, because my family wasn't really educated with the diet and exercise. My father was in the military, but we never really kind of like discussed that, you know what I mean? Like, obviously I always had like, checkups and things of that nature, where I was healthy, I was a healthy kid. But as far as like my weight, you know what I mean? It was never really a thing, So as I got older though, and comorbidities kicked in, I paid attention. I had my own kids and I just educated myself around the topic, and learned that, I wasn't necessarily the healthiest, So that is, my whole goal now. I did back, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, when I was probably 30. I'm 44. When I was 29, 30, I started going to the gym and kind of doing like my own thing, on the treadmill and stuff like that. But I can't say that it really, worked. And then I ended up with hypertension by the time I was 35, which is pretty genetic in my family because my grandmother, she was very thin, and still had hypertension. So I can't necessarily say it's just attributed to weight, because it very well may not be. And I say that because there was a time where I was probably even, I want to say 30 pounds lighter than I am right now. And my blood pressure was still up. So, it may just be a genetic thing, but we'll see, throughout my journey. But like I said, when I was younger, I started going to the gym, didn't really work the way I think that it ultimately should. Generally, I probably was in high school more like, I want to say in the two teens. Like when I say two teens, I mean like between 215, 220. And then as I became a little bit more of a more mature adult, late 20s, early 30s, like it went up to like 230, 235. And then when I got married, I want to say in my mid 20s, I can remember being 250, you know. And then generally throughout my adulthood, I was always around like 250, 260, 250, 260. When the pandemic hit, that's when my weight, you know, really jumped up. But after the gym, I actually got a personal trainer, and I did, you know, lose some weight, you know, gain some muscle and things of that nature. Me and my wife had went on this, what they call 40-day reset. I want to say maybe like 7, 8, 9 years ago. And I actually lost like 35 pounds, you know, doing that. Because I was probably at like 280, 290 when I started that. And I kind of got back down to like that 260, 265, where I spent a lot of my adult weight, you know, probably like 5 pounds lighter than I am, 5 to 7 pounds lighter than I am right now, maybe 10 pounds. But the difference I'll say with the GLP-1 is the ability to reduce inflammation. That is literally like the thing that I really noticed with this versus anything else. So needless to say, after the personal training, I, you know, picked up the 40-day reset. I lost 35 pounds. The pandemic hit. And then once the pandemic hit, it was just like life was different, you know. And I'm actually a pharmacy manager. So with me being a pharmacy manager, we were always open, you know. Throughout the pandemic, you know, there was a few things that were still operating, and that was hospitals and pharmacies. And because, you know, I run a pharmacy, I mean, we were open and we went through that whole thing, you know. So just the traumatic stories and people coming in telling us about people that they lost. And it really bothered me because, you know, being a bigger guy, I was kind of like in that category where it could be, you know, fatal, you know, if you were to contract it, you know, especially a bad case, and it turned, you know, from the infection to what we know now as the disease, you know. But I was lucky enough to be one of the first people to be able to get immunized because of me, you know, running the pharmacy, and we went into the senior homes and was, you know, immunizing those individuals. So we had the opportunity to be some of the first to get the Pfizer vaccine. And I probably was one of the first people in the country, you know, to actually get that Pfizer vaccine. And I was grateful for that. So I also adopted the use of N95 because people were using like, you know, the regular mask and the, you know, contracting COVID. And, you know, I told my wife, I said, nah, we're going to get N95. So I was special ordering N95s. Cost me like $200 a month just to order those. But everywhere we went, we had them. And guess what? None of us contracted COVID. None of us. Until we relaxed and the kids went back to school. Kids went back to school, we had our first bout of COVID. Classic, right? So anyway, long story short with that is during the pandemic, being in the house, eating a whole bunch, I started to pick up weight. And then I went to obesity specialist, and the obesity specialist asked me what approach I wanted to take. And the approach I chose to take was these little pills that kind of like expand in your stomach and make you full. But needless to say, it really didn't work, you know. And I kind of packed on, you know, some pounds. And just, I just was kind of like an afterthought, like just going through all of the stuff that was, I call depression, you know, from that COVID situation. And the weight just kind of ballooned up, you know what I mean? And I probably was floating around 300 to 310. And then last year, ended up 320. And I was like, wow, you know, 319.6. And I said, I got to do something. I said, because it is not working. It is not working. Everything I've tried is not working. And so when I went to my physical, which I was dreading because I probably waited 6 months even longer than I should have, because usually I go every year. And when I went, and then the physician went over my blood work, I already had hypertension, which is generally at the time in the 150s, 140s, 150s, 140 over 90, 150 over 95. Not a good range, not a good range. And I'm already taking 2 hypertensive medications. So I said, that's not good. Along with, she also said that my cholesterol was up. I had a little bit of high cholesterol, but not really high. And lo and behold, it was really high, and with my cholesterol being that high, having the hypertension, they also did this test where they test to see your probability of having a stroke or heart attack in the next 10 years. I had done the test before, and I was on the lower range of like 3.4, 3.5. But during this appointment, she said I was a 7. I said, whoa, 7 out of 10? That in 10 years I could have a heart attack or a stroke? No. I got to do something. And that's where I said, you know what? I want to try, this GLP and see what the GLPs could do for me. And I brought it up to her because she was ready to put me on like a cholesterol med. And I said, no, I'm already taking 2 hypertensive meds, and to add that, we head into a trifecta, no diabetes, but, that's where we're headed. And I just don't want that, and I say trifecta because in the pharmacy world, that's what we call the trifecta of drugs: the statins for the cholesterol, the hypertensive medications, and the diabetes. If, it's business. So like if you have patients on those 3 things, it's a trifecta because you kind of got a patient for life, and I'm just wasn't trying to be that, So I said, well, hey doc, I've been looking up and studying some things. I seen like the Wegovy, but I'd like to go what I think is a stronger route and try Zepbound. She said, well, that could be something we could try. And she said, let's do it. So I got on the 2.5, took my first shot. It was my birthday month, which my first day of starting was January 5th. My birth date is January 23rd. So I knew it would be a little difficult, to navigate like my birthday and that, with the celebration and stuff like that. But I said, I got to do it. Because I was prescribed it back in November on a few days before Thanksgiving, but I said, I know that's not going to work and I want to be successful. So I started in January. And I did, so once I started, in January, the first round, the 2.5 that I took, just kind of quieted that food noise. I mean, it literally calmed all the food noise. I literally had no food noise. I was like, wow. And at the time, I didn't even know what the food noise was, but I just know like I was like, wow. I mean, I'm not even thinking about food at all. You know what I mean? And around my birthday, like, obviously I still ate, but it was kind of tough getting it down. I actually had some cake and things of that nature. And I actually had my first bout of gout. I had never had gout before, and I actually got gout in my left big toe. And I didn't think about it. And I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense because I've eaten all these sweet things, and I'm actually taking a pen that diabetics take. So I had to think, and I said, I gotta really make sure I change my eating along with this. You know what I mean? So. But the miracle that the drugs are, and I'm hesitant to say miracle, but the amazing treatment that they are, allowed me to lose 15 pounds in my first month. So I was elated at that. I said, oh, these drugs really work. The only thing that I do wish that I would have done a better job with is actually recording. I didn't record much of the first month. I just took my initial weight, and then I said, hey, I checked, what I was down. I don't even think I checked 1 week what I was down because I was like probably not knowing like how great that the GLP-1 Zepbound would be. And I was able to, obviously figure out that in February, once I, got really good with recording weight and everything, that I started at 319.6, and at the time I had dropped 15 pounds, and I was like, whoa, I dropped 15 pounds in a month. That's amazing. That's probably the most weight I've ever dropped at one time. So that made February real serious for me. I got buckled down, and, I started doing my resistance training 3 days a week. I have these tapes by a guy named Dr. Jade Tata, and it's really good. I had him years ago, and I started using them again because years ago I did lose some weight utilizing, those tapes. And I said, well, I'm going to start them again. So not really a big gym person. I'd rather work out at home. I have the dumbbells and everything here, and I was like, you know what, let me just get started. And so I really buckled down. So for the first month, 3 days a week, I was doing that. I was 13.2 pounds in my second month. And then in March, it got a little bit nice, and I said, I got to start walking too. So basically what I was doing is kind of every other day. You know what I mean? I work out one day, walk the next. Work out one day, walk the next. I started out doing like 3 days back to back, and I was like, no, this can't be right. I shouldn't be resistant training 3 days back to back. I need to space it out. So by the end of March, I had a rhythm, and now we into April. So I lost in the month of March 11 pounds. So that's how I got to, me losing, almost those 40 pounds in those first few months. And now I have a really good rhythm. I start walking a mile every maybe 3 days a week, I want to say. So I get about 3 or 4 miles in a week, but I walk a mile a day. I don't, try to overdo it, doing 2-3 miles at a time. And the reason being is because I have osteoarthritis in my big toe, both of them, and my foot, which a lot of bigger guys get at some point, which is a wearing of your cartilage. My cartilage kind of wore down. So with the cartilage being wore down like that, there's a lot of pain. So I have a lot of pain in my toes because of that. And then in my foot, in my ankle, I'm sorry, I was working on an exercise bike, and I got something called overuse of the ligament. So I have the osteoarthritis in both toes. I have the middle of my foot, I have osteoarthritis in the left foot, and then I have a very thin ligament in my ankle. So you can imagine having pain in your feet and ankles makes it hard to really work out. But I'll say with this Zepbound and controlling the inflammation, I have pain, but it's definitely a lot less than before. The toes are really good. I have a little bit in the ankle, and that's usually after my workouts and whatnot. So that's kind of like something that was prohibiting me. That's really not. One thing I do have now still is in my right shoulder. I have a tendon issue in there, so that prohibits me from lifting heavy weights, which I know is a part of the process. Which is the only thing that I do have concern about, is not being able to lift the heavy weights. But I still do resistance training using my own body weight, doing everything except push-ups. So I do a lot of squats, so I try to use my legs a lot, which they said could be good because I can't really use that shoulder. Because if I lift, I've tried it, and if I go lifting, and this shoulder gets to acting up, I get dizzy, I get headaches and all that kind of stuff. So when I get my DEXA scan, which I plan to do at the 6-month mark, I think that, that could be very, very helpful in trying to diagnose and help treat that. So, but yeah, so fast forward to today, the GLP1 is working amazing. I lost 15% of my body weight in just a little more than 4.5 months, 15 weeks. So again, Zepbound is supposed to help you to lose 21% of your body weight in 72 weeks. So God willing, in another 10, not even 10, let's say another 6 or 7 weeks, I should be there, So, and I have no plan on stopping the medication. I'm on 7.5. It's been working great. I have minimal side effects. I use the basic stuff, Mago 7, Miralax, just to help with, the bowel movements. I also learned, and I never used it, but to not use Colace, because Colace is just a stool softener. There's no movement with Colace. It just literally softens the stool. So I think the Mago 7 is a much better alternative because it actually gives you some stimulation. And obviously the Miralax, makes it easy. So I think combination of that usually keeps me regular. I do pretty well with the fiber. I do muscle milk. Muscle milk is a go-to for me. It's really hard for me to make all my meals. You know what I mean? I do have, my wife do make a dinner. At least 3 or 4 times out the week. So I have a whole meal that I eat every night. Primarily chicken, meatballs, which is turkey, or salmon. So, and then when we go out, maybe once every other week or once a month, I get me a nice ribeye. So I get good protein. The other way I get my protein though, when I'm working, is through muscle milk. I do the 40 grams, so that keeps me full. The 40 grams of protein, and just noticing, looking at my numbers, my protein is inching up. My protein started out at 12 point some odd percent. You should be at like 16% to have, you know, to not be malnutrition. And now I'm at like 13.7. So it's definitely been crept up like almost a whole point just from the muscle milk. So that muscle milk really works. You know, I hear a lot of different opinions on different things, but I like to look at the numbers. And looking at the numbers, muscle milk, 40 grams, really helps to increase that protein, along with the chicken and stuff that the other meats that I eat. So I'm confident I'm getting enough protein. I get enough food. But you know, at this point, you know, I'm just, like I said, happy where I am with the journey. And I just wanted to like kind of like really go in and give people a little bit of a background, you know, what I do, how I'm getting there. That's pretty much where I'm at. My next video, I plan to kind of get into talking a little bit about the GLP1 news. I am planning on filling out the email for Sabrina and the On the Pen group, because I would like to get into the all men's group that they had on live. They had that the other day, and I looked at the guys, and I was really excited that there was finally like an all men's group talking about this journey. So look out for that, because I'm going to definitely respond to that email and get it going. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. It's Easter, and I'm about to, you know, get my daughter out to the yard so she can do her hunt, and we're gonna get some dinner and everything. Hopefully everybody's able to do the same and really, really enjoy your Easter Sunday before you get back to the grind. Thank you for tuning into the channel. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll talk to you later.